All right, so today we're going to be talking about our first set of special right triangles, and that's going to be our 45, 45, 90 triangles. Now, when I say special right triangles, we have two different kinds, the 45, 45, 90, and the 30, 60, 90. Now, what these numbers are referring to are the angle measures in these right triangles. So 45, 45, 90 has a 45-degree angle, a 45-degree angle, and a 90-degree angle. Now remember when we talked about the Pythagorean theorem, those two legs are connected to the right angle. Now those legs we're still going to refer to as legs. But what I want you to remember is that we've talked about the fact that the angles, if the angles are the same, the sides opposite them are also the same. All right, so that means that these legs are going to be congruent to each other. That's why we see just the L for our value on those legs because they're the same. Now we still have the hypotenuse being the side directly across from that right angle. And now how we're going to do this and why this is special right triangles because there's a certain property that holds true every single time we have a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So I'm going to give you the rules for this and then we're going to go through and practice. So to get from a leg value to the hypotenuse in a 45, 45, 90, we're going to multiply by the square root of 2. All right, now this makes sense because we're going from a shorter side, which is the legs, to a longer side, which is the hypotenuse. Remember, the hypotenuse is always going to be the longest side in a triangle, a right triangle. Now we're going to go the other direction. We're going to talk about if we have a hypotenuse value and we need to find the leg. So we're going to be getting a smaller value. So we're going to do the opposite and divide by root 2. All right, now this seems kind of wonky right now, but we're going to work through a few problems. Just remember that these are the two rules we're going to be working with. Now, when we have a special right triangle, I always want your answers in exact form. So that's why we're going to keep the roots in there if we have roots in our problem. All right, so this first problem here. We have a leg value of 9. Now, a few different ways we know that this is a leg is because it's attached to that right angle, okay? And we know that this other side is a leg as well. Now, we know this also is going to be 9 because it's across from a 45-degree angle, which mathematically, the only other way this works is for this to be a 45-degree angle as well. And again, if the angles are the same, the sides opposite them are going to be the same. All right, now we need to find the hypotenuse, which is our x in this case. So remember our rule from the leg to the hypotenuse, we need to multiply by root 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our leg value, our 9, and we're going to multiply that with root 2. So what this becomes is just 9 root 2. Because we want this as an exact answer, we're not going to multiply the 9 with root 2 because then we'd have to round our answer and it wouldn't be exact anymore. So that's your answer, 9 root 2. That's the value of the hypotenuse. All right, now we're going to do the same thing here. We again have two legs that were given, and we know that because they are attached to the right angle. We also see that these values are the same. So the only way that this works in a right triangle, again, is if these angles are 45 degrees. That's the only way that these sides could be the same. So again, we know we're talking about a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So to get from my leg to my hypotenuse, I'm going to multiply by root 2. So I start with my leg value, 6 root 2, and I'm going to multiply that with root 2. All right, now how I like to explain this is think of these roots as like terms. We're going to do the operations together with those. So I'm going to multiply what's under the square root. So I get the square root of 2 times 2, which would give me the square root of 4. All right, so that's that 2 and that 2. Now we know the square root of 4 is really just 2. So we can take everything that's in this red box here and replace it with this 2. So that leaves us with 6 times 2, which would be 12. And that's going to be our value of our hypotenuse, 12. All right, so again, the kind of little different thing here is dealing with the square roots. So I'm going to walk through that again. So we have root 2 times root 2. So we're going to take whatever roots we have, we're going to multiply those numbers together. So we have 2 times 2, which would give us the 4. And then if we can take the square root of that number perfectly, we're going to do that. So the square root of 4 will give us 2. So we could then replace everything that root 2 times root 2 with the 2 that it really becomes. Then we had our 6 that we carried down times our 2, which gave us 12. All right, now we're going to work in the opposite direction. We're going to work from the hypotenuse to the leg. So let's remember our rule here. So hypotenuse to the leg, we're going to a smaller side. We're going to divide by root 2. All right, so here's where we start to get some funky stuff going on. I'm going to show you the second problem first because it's a little clearer to understand. But we're going to take our hypotenuse, and to get our leg values, we're going to divide by root 2. So I'm going to take 5 root 2, and I'm going to divide that by root 2. Now, root 2 over root 2 cancels out because it equals 1. Anything over itself equals 1. So we're just left with 5. And that's the value of our leg. Actually, both legs. All right, so that one wasn't so bad. But now let's look at this one. There's just a little more math involved, a little cleaning up to do. So I'm going to take my 8, my hypotenuse, and I'm going to divide by root 2. Now, in the math world, having a square root on the denominator of a fraction is a no-no. So we can't do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to rationalize this fraction, and to do that, we're going to multiply both the top and the bottom by root 2. So we multiply the top and the bottom by that denominator. Now remember, when we multiply fractions, we multiply across the top, then we multiply across the bottom. Okay, so I have 8 times root 2, so we're multiplying these, and that just becomes 8 root 2. All right, we can't multiply an 8 and a square root together because they're not, think of them like terms. Now the bottom, we're going to do like we did in the last problem. So we're going to multiply these square roots together. So since they're both under the square root, we're going to take that square root, and we're going to do 2 times 2. Well, we know 2 times 2 will give us the square root of 4, and the square root of 4 is 2. So that's going to be our denominator here. Now we're almost done, because the last thing I want to do is I want to check to see if I can simplify this at all. So I'm going to look at the 8 over 2. We can't look at root 2 over 2 because that's not going to simplify, because 8 and 2 are whole numbers and root 2 has a root over it. So I'm going to look, and I see that this 8 over 2 can be simplified because 8 divided by 2 will give me 4. So this is all going to become 4 root 2. And that's the value of our legs here. Now again, we want to leave these square roots in our answers because this is an exact answer. This is what I'm going to be looking for. I know that the idea of this isn't super challenging, but the new, really new part might be dealing with the radicals. So I'm just going to take a second and do a quick little extra example of dealing with these radicals. So I'm just going to make up a couple problems here. First, I'm going to go back to having a 45, 45, 90, where I'm going to give you the leg value. So let's say that that's, let's say 9 root 2. Actually, let's say it's 9 root 3. Right, something a little different. So we're going to take that, and to get the hypotenuse, we have to multiply by root 2. So we have 9 root 3. We're going to multiply that by root 2 to get to the hypotenuse value. Now, we multiply these roots together. So I'm going to carry my 9 down. And then I have the square root of 3 times 2, which is 6. Now, this doesn't come out to any perfect number. So this is my final answer. this is where I'm going to leave it, 9 root 6. All right, let's do another one. All right, and I'll do another leg to hypotenuse problem. So I'm going to solve for my hypotenuse. I have 45, 45, 90. And let's say this time I have 3 root 2 as my leg. So again, to get to the hypotenuse, I take my leg and I multiply it by root 2. And it's always going to be root 2 with a 45, 45, 90. We're either going to multiply by root 2 or divide by root 2. So I see that I have these two numbers under the square root. So I'm going to multiply those together. So 2 times 2 gives me 4. I'm going to carry down my 3 out front. Well, I see that root 4 really equals 2. So I'm going to replace that with a 2. Because again, root 4, take the square root of 4, that's 2. So that's where that number comes from. So then I have 3 times 2, which gives me 6. And that would be my hypotenuse value. All right, and I'm going to do another division problem, so hypotenuse to leg problem. Again, I'm just making these up just to give you guys a few more examples to look at. All right, so we have our 45, 45, 90. Let's say our hypotenuse is 10. All right, so remember, we're going to divide by root 2 if we have the hypotenuse and we're trying to get to the leg. So I have 10 divided by root 2. All right, remember the fraction bar does mean division. So I can't leave that root on the bottom, so I'm going to rationalize, multiply both the top and the bottom by root 2, by that denominator. And then because we have a fraction times a fraction, we're going to multiply across the top to get our numerator, multiply across the bottom to get our denominator. So 10 times root 2 will be 10 root 2. We can't simplify that any further. And then here on the denominator, we have root 2 times root 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. So we get the square root of 4, which is really 2. So that's my denominator. And then my last step is going to see if I can simplify this 10 over 2 here, which it can in this case, because 10 divided by 2 would be 5. So our final answer would be 5 root 2. All right, now sometimes you are going to get problems where you can't simplify the fraction any further, and that's okay. So I'll show you one of those right here. So again, 45, 45, 90. We're going to solve for a leg value. And again, both these legs are the same because they're across from congruent angles. And let's say our hypotenuse is 7. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to take that 7, our hypotenuse, we're going to divide by root 2. We can't leave that square root on the bottom, so we're going to rationalize by multiplying the top and bottom by the square roots of 2, which is our denominator. Just multiply across, so I get 7 root 2 on the top. And then on the bottom, we get the square root of 2 times 2, which is 4, which equals 2. All right, so that's my denominator. Now I'm going to look. 7 over 2 doesn't divide perfectly. So you can leave it like this, or if you would like, you can divide it out if it comes out to a nice short decimal. So like in this case, 7 divided by 2 will give us 3.5, and we still have that root 2. Okay, so 2 different ways you can write your answer. Both are correct. I would accept both of them. Both of them are in exact form. So either way would be fine.